Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, even in history, there has been prisoners or wrongdoers who is given a chance to reduce the sentence or being pardoned by to serve in the military in wars and so on, such as the Christian War or something, of when these wrongdoers who have committed adultery, committed rape or all those wrong things are being given pardons if they serve in the military for some amount of years or some amount of battles. Okay. Moving on. Okay. We're going to set this debate on a parameter that it is only on countries that are liberal democratic countries that does not allow death sentence but extended sentence. Okay. And we also are giving this chance to all the prisoners in the prison and not the lockup, because basically those people are not even serving the sentence for more than a year. Okay. So what I mean by this is that if we give this to all these prisoners, everybody in the prison will get a chance to have a faster freedom or get back to their life, to their reality a bit faster than what they should have been sentenced for. Sorry. Okay, next is the reduced sentence that we are giving to these prisoners on a basis of how long they're serving on the military and their sentence. For example, we're going to reduce 3 years out. For example, we are going to reduce like 3 years from their sentence for an amount of 1.5 years in the military. And if their sentence is shorter, then the calculation can make a commitment. Yes, sir.
Why is freedom to prisoners, the very people who broke laws, so important that it's worth jeopardizing our national security?
Okay. Once we take these people, once we absorb these people into the military, they will be given under special teams, special contingents of where it's included of other military personnel that probably is in the same term as them, which is trying to reduce their sentence, or also these secret groups of military where they are not allowed to be near the citizens or anyone in their own country. Okay. Okay. For people who have death penalties or triple death penalties, 5 death penalties. Okay, if they serve in the military, their sentence is not reduced, but how they are treated is different. Such as for people like this who are sentenced into a maximum security facility, will be reduced to maybe a lower type prison with some extra benefit, because if you're serving in the military until you're old, even the normal military personnel will get their own benefits, so they will get their kind. Yeah.
So your ultimate objective is to allow prisoners to be out of prison quicker. But how do you ensure at the same time that these prisoners will be rehabilitated properly, so that they will be able to be back with the society after they leave prison?
Okay. On that. Okay. Prisoners who choose to have the sentence reduced by serving in the military will have a check and balance, a calculation on their head on which is better. Is it worth risking your life in fighting in wars, in joining the military, or is it worth it just committing your time, just having your time? And if you serve the military, the point of the military is to, okay, not the point. How they train the military is on discipline and on on how to serve the country. So if they have been disciplined and brainwashed on how to be a better person, then they should be let into the society because they have changed into a better person. Okay, now moving on to my first substantive is that these prisoners who actually yes.
If prisons can grant you the same kind of benefits like discipline and all these things that you want from the military, why you need the military to achieve all these benefits?
Okay, I'm going to talk about that in my substantive, which is the sense of redemption. Okay, if you're serving in the military and comparing you're serving your time in the prison, it's different because when you're in a prison, you don't do much. The only thing you do is when you have time, you play something or you read books in your cell. Okay, if you go to the military, you will actually have to serve the country, protect the country, and also to those who actually want to repent, they can have a sense of redemption because for all the trouble that they have caused to the country and its citizens, this is actually an alternative way of them to actually serve their country and also pay back the country of what trouble that he has caused. Sorry. And next is okay, by letting these prisoners serve into the military, it actually has a check and balance where it is a tantamount effect of, because if they serve the military, there is a risk of these people dying, and if they don't serve, there is the risk of dying of boring in prison. So if they do this, they will have to make a proper check and balance in their head of actually, is it worth dying to reduce a couple years of prison sentence, or should I just stay in the prison and live my life reading books or playing in the field? Okay, and from that, what I told you is that it's a way that when people serve the military, they can be turned into something useful for the society, something that can be turned for the greater good of the nation, and also that for those who want to repent, the sense of redemption can be taken by serving their country and protecting the people who he has caused problems to in the past. And also the tantamount effect of which will this prison actually choose this serving the military. And for that, we as a government propose this motion. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, Irza, I think side government got this debate wrong. Let's face it, Mr. Speaker, all that side government wanted at the end of the day was proper rehabilitation and discipline. All these, Mr. Speaker, can be found and is the point of rehabilitation centres such as jail, Mr. Speaker. And we tell you that the point that the shoddy characterization where people actually just read and sleep in jail is also wrong, Mr. Speaker, because it's within these jails where people actually learn how to rehabilitate themselves. Because that's the point of it in the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, to rehabilitate, to make sure that you can re-assimilate yourself back into society. And we think that they've missed that, Mr. Speaker. But let's make a couple of characterizations before I deal with their case, right? Because the check and balance within side government was this, that people might not take this decision as a form of escape because they might not want to die. But you have to realize, Mr. Speaker, that not all countries are in conflict or is in war right now, Mr. Speaker. So therefore, the check and balance that they want does not exist in these countries because there's no conflict for them to go out there and lay their lives on the line for, Mr. Speaker. But we also have to acknowledge that there are two kinds of prisoners that in the end of the day will most probably take up this offer, Mr. Speaker. Maybe there's some that truly want to serve the army and truly want to defend their country, Mr. Speaker. But secondly, there's also the people who will take it as a form of escape. Because let's face it, guys, a civic death isn't pleasant, and you want to get out of jail as fast as you can, even if it means a military. Because the difference between a military and a jail is that you have more freedom in a military. You can sleep on proper beds. There's a form of adoration or form of benefits that you get within the military that you don't get in jail, Mr. Speaker, and we don't think that that's something we want to give. But let's see the only point that he wanted to make, because he thought there would be a form of redemption from these prisoners, Mr. Speaker. But when you're a prisoner, Mr. Speaker, the only person that you want to take redemption on is the state, because it was the state that put you in those prisons, Mr. Speaker. So we don't want them to have this sense of redemption, because in the end of the day, all his analysis wanted to prove is that the military will make these people good, Mr. Speaker, and we don't think that's actually necessary, because we have seen cases of ex-convicts coming out of jail and they become functioning members of society. So we don't think that your proposal is necessary, Mr. Speaker. But let's make fun of this idea, Mr. Speaker, because he started talking about people on death row serving the military, Mr. Speaker. First of all, you already got a bunch of convicts that already contravene the criminal justice system, but then you have the worst of the lot, and based on his analysis, you wanted to put them on a secret squad, Mr. Speaker. I don't know how this will actually help the military. This is actually more of a threat to national security, Mr. Speaker, and we don't think that they'll stand at the end of the day. I have two pieces of substantive for you. Firstly, I'll tell you how this will disrupt the operations of the military under their paradigm. But secondly, I'll also tell you how it demonizes the military in the eyes of the public, Mr. Speaker. But let's talk about my first substantive, Mr. Speaker, because we have to understand that the military and its form of internal conduct, Mr. Speaker, demands a high level of trust between the personnel, Mr. Speaker. Your brother in arm has to know that you're willing to take a bullet for him, or you have his back at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker. What happens right now is, Mr. Speaker, these are people who haven't served their time at the end of the day. So that form of trust between members is distorted, because even in status quo, ex-cons who can join the army are having such a hard time to assimilate within these situations, because no one can fully trust them because of the perception that they've already contravened the criminal justice system and they cannot be trusted, Mr. Speaker. The fact that most military wings, for example, the Marines in the United States, Mr. Speaker, who take law and code of conduct above everything else, above all else, Mr. Speaker, shows that sometimes they cannot even trust people, or they can trust, or they find it hard to trust people who has already contravened this law, Mr. Speaker. Because you have to understand that these are criminals. These are the very people who breach not the most lenient versions of the law in the States, Mr. Speaker. The law that governs you and your fellow man. But when you're put into a sensitive situation such as the army, where the rules are more rigid and your code of conduct is governed from A to Z, Mr. Speaker, this is where trust in your ability to follow that law is highly doubted by your fellow man, Mr. Speaker, and we don't think that that's something that will affect the army. But what's the consequence that will affect the army badly? But what's the consequence to that, Mr. Speaker? Because we're acknowledging the fact that the military needs a rigid structure where people can easily trust each other and take orders from one another, Mr. Speaker. These are the kind of things that will set the army into disarray, because you don't know whether your private is willing to take an order from the superior officer, Mr. Speaker, and whether he's willing to follow the law at the end of the day. This makes your military strategies even less effective, Mr. Speaker. Before I move on, any POIs?
No.
Yes.
Thank you. But let's talk about the second part, how it demonizes them in the eyes of society. Because society views the military as such. They're the bastions of national security. They're the ones on the front lines protecting you from an external threat, Mr. Speaker. If unrehabilitated convicts enter, Mr. Speaker, the system will consist of people who society doesn't trust, Mr. Speaker. So the mentality that our nation is being protected by the very same person that that breached our law will be there, Mr. Speaker. But what are the harms of this, Mr. Speaker? I have 4 harms for you. Firstly, the sense of security within the public is heavily distorted, because society needs to feel safe, Mr. Speaker, and this comes from the fact that you can trust your military to protect you from external threats. And if you cannot trust the people, or if it consists of people who've already broken the law in the beginning of the day, you lose this trust, and you lose this basic right which governments have to give you, Mr. Speaker. This is why we even punish criminals in the first place and lock them up, Mr. Speaker. But secondly, Mr. Speaker, how it affects recruitment, Mr. Speaker. Because why do people want to join the army? Firstly, it's because of necessity, in times of necessity. But second, it's because some people view it as an honourable job. When you allow convicts to enter, then that view of it being an honourable job is heavily skewed because it's homogenized and it's affiliated with the people who broke the very law that they're trying to protect, Mr. Speaker. So in fact, it taints that system. Thirdly, people start losing faith in the criminal justice system because when criminals only get rewarded when they show good behavior. This is a reactionary policy because people want to make sure that these people have a better impact, because the impact on society if these people aren't properly rehabilitated is harmful, Mr. Speaker. So this is your paradigm is contradictory to the whole criminal justice system, and it makes it easy for people to get out of jail free, Mr. Speaker. But lastly, Mr. Speaker, how it affects funding, because people won't trust the army, so they won't see the need to fund this army at the end of the day because they don't trust them. For all these reasons and more, we're proud to propose. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, we are given the choice to these prisoners to actually retribute, another way to retribute themselves. So basically I'm going to talk about how we will have a bigger number of army, and before that, few rebuttals. The leader of the opposition came up here and told us that it is wrong to have another way to rehabilitate. But then they didn't actually. He didn't actually say why is it wrong. And I don't think there's anything wrong about giving an alternative to these prisoners to rehabilitate themselves. And they say that repenting is wrong. I mean, and this is the way. This is the wrong way for them to repent. And I don't think that is wrong, because it's the military. When you go to the military, you are trained, and you are trained to become a very good army, to become loyal to your country and to serve your country, and this will actually make them think more, and it will eventually brainwash them and will change them into a better person. So moving on to my point, which is there will be a bigger number of army. Why do I say this, and how will this actually be? Will the number of army increase? Is that the prisoners who are sentenced life in prison and death penalty, will actually consider to this choice, because I mean, who wants to live in a prison for their entire life, and who wants to get killed? I mean, at least they will want to have this. They want to be sorry.
If now your objective is to increase the capacity or the size of the army, you need to show us in what context you are debating, and show us there is a dire necessity for us to suddenly resupply the army with a lot of soldiers, and it needs to come from prisoners.
Okay. Okay. Before that, I'll finish my sentences now, which is these people who are sentenced to life in prison, and death penalty will actually consider to this choice, because they do not want to they do not want to they actually these kind of people who consider to do this kind of things, they actually have already think, why do they want to risk their lives? Why do they want to risk their lives in going to war? Because they want to actually serve the country. They want to serve the society. No, thank you. This is they will be. So these are kind of people will actually fill up the numbers that we need in the armies. No, thank you. Why are we wanting? Why is it a dire need for us to increase this number of? To increase the number of soldiers, because we don't know, we don't know. Anything could happen to our country, right? And we are actually insufficient of armies, and when we actually do this, it will eventually increase the number of soldiers, and when the number is big, it gives you more power, and it gives you a better impression to the enemy. When how is this good, right? It is actually the nature of the human mentality that if you see a really big number of your opponents, of your enemy, you'll get it is a nature for them to get scared, because thank you. So they will be disturbed, and they will their mentality will be disturbed, and they will probably will thank you. They will probably will just yes.
This argument is value neutral in this debate. You need to prove to us why it's justified for them to even be in the army, and not just assert the benefits of having a large army, which isn't even in the debate.
We don't really have enough soldiers, so that is why we want to take this prisoner. We want to give this choice to the prisoners for them to serve the country, and because this kind of choice, this kind of job, which is being a soldier, not everybody wants to be a soldier, and because the prisoners, if they even go out, how are they going to build up their lives? Because obviously no one would want to take them to work with them. But so this is so we are actually helping them to actually build up their lives, and this is the only way that is actually helping them, and this is why we need to pass this motion.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, and Irzal, coming from side opposition, we told you from very early on that it's, number one, not even necessary for us to recruit people from prisons to be military officers, but number two, why it's harmful to not only the military, but our national security as a whole. A ton of analysis that came from Moyat's speech, Mr. Speaker, was completely and utterly ignored from Deputy Prime Minister. He talked to you about the levels of why distrust will occur with the military, and why internally as well as externally this distrust was extremely harmful to how the military fundamentally operates. What am I going to argue in my speech? I'm going to tell you fundamentally why it disrupts the rehabilitation process for individuals who are for criminals, and it will harm society when they go back into society. But before that, let's look at three rebuttals. Firstly, is the objective of side government, because we think there was a clear shift in stance coming from side government. Initially, their objective from that side was that in any circumstances possible, no nuance whatsoever, a quick exit from prison, regardless of what crime that you committed, is a good thing. No analysis whatsoever on telling us why it's justified to have a murderer escape prison early on without first proving to us that he deserves being given that pardon. Moyat told you in his analysis, Mr. Speaker, that pardons are always reactive in nature. That's why we give pardons or parole, Mr. Speaker, when someone shows good behavior. So it's reactive to that person already showing improvement. Their policy, Mr. Speaker, grants the privilege of being a military officer and the freedom that comes with it before he even proves that his behavior has improved to begin with, Mr. Speaker. So we think this is counterproductive to the entire criminal justice system, because you're not even rehabilitating first before rewarding him, and I'll tell you later why that's seen as a reward system for bad behavior. Secondly, the second objective became the larger army is always better to scare off individuals. Let's first point out that half of the speech of Deputy Prime Minister was value neutral, because all she talked about was the benefits of having a large army, not telling us why it's justified to having that army come from prisoners, Mr. Speaker. There are two questions that she has to answer. Firstly, why is there a dire necessity for us to recruit more people, Mr. Speaker? Because we don't really see any conflicts in particular when we have a shortage of soldiers to deal with the situation.
Yeah.
Second question, Mr. Speaker, why does this recruitment have to come from prisoners per se, Mr. Speaker? Because we think there are a multitude and a plethora of ways where you can recruit and incentivize individuals to enter into the military, and all of them law-abiding citizens, or even individuals who have already served their time, Mr. Speaker. We have many incentives. Things like we'll pay for your college fees if you join the military first, like for example for medics in the military, later on we'll pay for medic school, Mr. Speaker, if you serve the military for 5 to 10 years. We think these are many types of incentives that you can give to legal individuals and not individuals who have contravened the law in such a blatant manner. Second rebuttal is deterrence. They told us, and this is all that their deterrence was, that some people feel they will die, so most people won't be willy-nilly with this decision. Two responses. Firstly, not all countries are in conflict, so this deterrence is circumstantial. It doesn't work for countries that are not in conflict. Secondly, even if your country is not in conflict, even if your country is in conflict, Mr. Speaker, most officers, military officers, don't see action, Mr. Speaker, because most of the experienced forces are sent out first before you go back to the last draft, which is the people who are newest in the draft, Mr. Speaker. So most of these prisoners won't ever see action, and the deterrence doesn't work. Secondly, you'll be able to specialize in the field in the military, whether you want to be a communications officer or you want to be in the medical field, Mr. Speaker, and many of the other jobs that don't require you to be on the front line, Mr. Speaker. These things negate all the deterrence of losing your life in the military, Mr. Speaker. So we don't think it works even if you're in conflict. Lastly, it's about recruitment. On the side of government, they told us that we need to recruit more people. Moyat told you extensively that, look, if the preferable recruitment, Mr. Speaker, are legal individuals, but by creating this distrust in the army, you're going to harm the kind of recruitment that you can get from legitimate individuals. We think that this is even more harmful, because now you're making a value judgment and you're preferring invalid individuals or illegal individuals over valid individuals. We think on the principle and practical level, this is extremely harmful. Let's go on to a substance. Before that, Pions? No. Alright. How does this disrupt rehabilitation? We have three levels for you. But first, a broad characterization. Within the fundamental difference between jail and military service is that jail has the ultimate objective and direction of sending these individuals back into society, Mr. Speaker. That's why all rehabilitative efforts is like vocational training or job training, community service, making sure they can function back in normal society despite all the stigma on them. But first level of analysis of why it disrupts rehabilitation. Because the fundamental nature of military service is to encourage aggression, Mr. Speaker. We think this is harmful. Why? Because prisoners are in prison because they have succumbed to the very fundamental fault of being aggressive, of killing an individual, of being aggressive when you rape an individual or assaulting an individual. These are baseline psychological flaws that need to be repaired, Mr. Speaker, through rehabilitative methods. But when you're in the military, where the main line of ideology or message is that aggression is a good thing, aggression is necessary for you to win wars, Mr. Speaker, and not only that, aggression is attached to all the other values of a military, like honor, like something that's respectable, Mr. Speaker, and society will adore you for. All these things validate their already pre-existing inclination to being aggressive. So later on, when they go back into society, this form of leaning towards aggression isn't repaired in any sense whatsoever, but they'll be more inclined to be aggressive. We think this is counterproductive. But on a second level, Mr. Speaker, we think this makes individuals who are in prison an easier target of discrimination and ragging. Why is this a problem? Acknowledging the fragile state of a prisoner or a criminal, Mr. Speaker, their very fragile psychological state. In a military platoon, they are very much discriminatory against individuals who are deemed to be villains or deemed to be breaching the code of conduct. For example, you see in the military being heavily discriminatory against homosexuals just by virtue of them being homosexuals, because that's how strongly they adhere to their very conservative ideology. What more to a criminal, Mr. Speaker, who will get battered every day for something that they've done in the past? We think this harms their rehabilitation later. Lastly, we think that this glorifies his criminal activity, Mr. Speaker. An individual can only be rehabilitated if he dies a civic death and suffers the consequences of a civic death. We think this is important. We should not glorify this individual, we should punish him. For with that, we are very proud to oppose. Thank you.
Many issues in this debate. The first one is the military that is stretched into the society, and the second one is why bring the argument of the number of the armies. Let's deal with it slowly. Now, what they say is like army that will have their back at their brother army that is like, okay, I will back you up. That's the logic there. Now let me tell you what happened, and it is not going to happen when we have these prisoners as the army. And let me tell you what happens in the military. These prisoners, okay, they think about it, okay, they wanted to join the military. And when they join this military, what kind of process they are going through, they undergo? They're essentially going through some hard processes. They get brainwashed, they get trained, they have to wake up as early as they can, they have to be in the water or whatever it is, the train is intensive, right? And this is how we wanted them to pay, and we think it is justified for this kind of thing that they undergo when we compare to the amount of the years that they get to be reduced from the sentence that they get. And then what happens in the status quo? The prisoners in the prison, we think that they much or less waste their time in the prison. They sleep in bed, they eat, sometimes they get disputed among themselves, or maybe some of them read the books, right, to waste the time, to spend the time. And how is this not, we think that we need to do something to these prisoners in order for them to get a better rehabilitation and become more productive citizens when they're out. And then when they're out, but they argue that that under the status quo it is super effective, that once the prisoners are out, they are a good person. But when we see at the crime rates, you have the same people committing the crime again, or another crime maybe heavier or lighter, we don't care, right? And then whether the war happens or not, we are unsure. Because even in the Lahad Datu, disputes with no one can see that it will happen someday, but it happens now. No one know when Palestine will eventually get the peaceful that they wanted to have. So what I'm trying to say to you here is that no one can see the future. And the second one, we bring the argument of the number of the armies. Why? Because they fail to understand our parameter. We are setting this to the liberal democratic country, which is the US, the European Union, who associate themselves in the NATO. So the NATO is the one who always been in dispute. Right. That's why there comes our arguments, but they blatantly they don't want to deal with this case, and they say the war is not likely to happening. And then we see that when the army that they have is this kind of amount, and when we are doing this, when we passing this motion, we expect the number will increase, because the prisoners that we most likely to consider this army consider in joining this army is the one who is going through a long sentence. And then that is why we were saying this, because that's why we're having so much debate of whether or not to give amnesty to this kind of people. And then what we're trying to do is that we are trying to increase the number of the military, or somehow build a psychological to build psychological afraid in the opposition when they see this number of the army increases. That's why we think that it is good when it happens. Before that, any POIs?
This is a simple question. Sure, you can have the benefits of making sure that people are psychologically afraid of a large army, but why can't you get these recruitments from legitimate individuals who haven't contravened the law, or even people who have already served their time? Why people who haven't... Sure, we concede to the benefits of you being able to scare a person with a large army, but why can't you get those people from legal individuals or individuals who have already served their time in prison?
Yeah, this is already happening. We're trying to build more armies here. And then on the second issue, onto the society. And then the society that, under their logic, will feel insecurity with them, because now the one that who protect them, who's going to protect them, is the one who breaches the law in the first place. And then we see this, and we already explained to you how these armies, these armies are the people who already been rehabilitated within the process that they undergo under the military processes that they join in, right? So with that, thank you.
Like thank the government.
Greetings, Irizal. I hope life is treating you well. Mr. Speaker, it's been really hard for me to come up with the real issues that happen in this debate. Then again, I have 4 issues. The first issue, Mr. Speaker, is the question: what are the activities you can have in prison to avoid prisoners from sleeping all the time? Second issue, Mr. Speaker, is how do you best attract people to join the army? The third issue is the issue that we talked about, the trust within the military personnel and in the society. And lastly, we'll talk about rehabilitation process and how do you best rehabilitate prisoners, because that's the ultimate objective, really, Mr. Speaker. Before I move on to the real issues, the last 2 issues, let's go on to the first 2 issues. Firstly, how do you prevent them from sleeping? I have some suggestions, Mr. Speaker, but please do not penalize me by saying that this is a new matter and consider it as a rebuttal instead. So my rebuttal to them, because they say that prisoners sleep all the time, firstly, the rebuttal, they told you that they don't sleep all the time, that's what Maya said. Then Mirza came up and said there are other activities that prisoners are encouraged to do, for example, vocational training, community services, and psychological, what Myth said, right? Another rebuttal to that, Mr. Speaker, is that we think, firstly, is that you can host an American football tournament in prison. For example, longest yard, like what Alexander did in prison, Speaker. And B, you can have a debating tournament. In fact, this is also good for them because most prisoners are not that smart, which is pretty much why they commit crime in the first place. Probably through debate you can learn the theories of punishment and why will then necessarily they will be deterred from committing crime. But on a more serious note, Mr. Speaker, the ultimate objective that comes from the government is to allow prisoners to quit prison quicker, which we think is flawed altogether, because that's never the objective of sending prisoners into prison, to get them out quicker. Because ultimately it's about rehabilitating them and ensuring that they'll be a better person once they leave and no longer repeating their crimes, Speaker. But more importantly, Speaker, the third rebuttal, we think that the moment you do this, you take away the theories of punishment or the necessities of even sending them to prison in the first place. For example, what they talked about, rehabilitation, but more importantly, on other theories of punishment, like retribution, for example. For killing another person, you need to be retributed so that you will never repeat that crime again. Or other theories of punishment, like closure, for example, to give the closure to the victim family so that they will feel better. Now that because their family member were killed, then they want these people to also be retributed so they will feel better about themselves and they can move on with their lives. And lastly, deterrence. Because right now, and this is the biggest harm that the theories of punishment that they take away. The moment you do this, then prisoners or criminals will not be scared because they know for a fact that they will be able to reduce the sentence, and even more worrying is that it will be reduced to half of the time that what they propose to Speaker. So therefore we think the rebuttal to that is that we think they take away the theories of punishment, therefore people will no longer be deterred, will no longer have retributed, and no closure to the victim family. The second issue, Speaker, is how do you best attract people to join the army? My two suggestions are, A, you can increase the salary or give more perks to people so that they will be attracted, or by giving real girls to these people, or more activities like gambling in prison, Speaker, in the army. I think that's already happening, I don't know. A second suggestion, Mr. Speaker, is that you can host Army Idol, something else. You know? You have an army, someone who wins a competition, will be the... Okay, that's crap. Anyway, Mr. Speaker, on a more serious note, since apparently the third speaker made it apparent that the proposal or what they proposed is in places like the United States of America, for example, right? So let's do a case study in United States of America. We think for them to attract people or to send the prisoners to join the army, to increase the amount of army, it's not what's happening in status quo. It goes against the trend. Because in status quo, Mr. Speaker, United States of America is moving away to the trend of demilitarizing their army. They are pulling away from Afghanistan, Mr. Speaker. They're trying to reduce the spending of on the military, Mr. Speaker. And second rebuttal is that in status quo as well, during the last election, the biggest issue was about army. To reduce the military spending, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, we think that their proposal of increasing the army, particularly in United States of America, is not what is favored by the citizen or what's happening in status quo. It contradicts the status quo when they are already moving towards a trend of demilitarizing the army, Mr. Speaker. That's a serious note and not a serious rebuttal and not a new matter. Ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to the real debate, right? The third issue is issue of trust. Let's really analyze this. We understand when it comes to the army that you have code of conduct that you always have to abide by. You need to understand that these people have certain things that they are supposed to keep within only themselves. But more importantly, Mr. Speaker, let's not deny, especially understanding that the debate happens in a place where a lot of conflict happens. This more reason for army personnel to trust each other, Mr. Speaker. Something that Moy already argued to you, but was never negated. But before that, I'm really happy to accept the POI.
In the end of the day, both benches want these prisoners to go through rehabilitation. Can you tell us why this won't happen under our guidance?
Thanks. Oh yeah, I'll tell that at the last issue. So let's just conclude this trust issue anyway, right? Since it wasn't negated. Let's move on to the last issue and answer the POI at the same time, right? We've argued to you, Mr. Speaker, that when it comes to rehabilitating prisoners, necessarily you need to ensure that they are properly rehabilitated. This is when he already made a clear analysis and distinction between military and prison. Because military and prison is completely two different things. Because when it comes to rehabilitating prisoners, it's about ensuring that they will be able to go back to society. But military isn't so much about that. For example, a soldier won't even have a normal identification card. You'll have a different ID altogether, Mr. Speaker, which means that you are already someone unique and not a normal citizen. Because your ultimate duty as a military is to be able to protect the citizen, and you're not as equal to another citizen, right? Mr. Speaker, the only thing, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to that rehabilitating process to these prisoners will be disrupted, because they're supposed to be brought back to society and not away from society by being a different person and going through all sorts of aggression and stuff like that, right? But answering that to you, Mr. Speaker, we think that you will not be able to rehabilitate them exactly what he told you, because they will go through sort of aggression as opposed to psychological treatment in order to tell them that they firstly to deter them from repeating the same crime, but more importantly, Mr. Speaker, these people will feel that aggression is the right thing to do. Because firstly, let's say an example of a prisoner who was taken into a criminal was taken into the prison for beating other people, for example, right? Or no, killing another person. So right now, when you were taken into becoming a military soldier, then you were taken into the war. That's when you started killing people. That's when they will feel that it is okay for him to kill people. You disrupt the rehabilitation process where he was supposed to understand that it is wrong to kill people, Mr. Speaker. You disrupt that rehabilitation process. You take away whatever the person has effectively, help them throughout their time when they before they join the military, Mr. Speaker. And ultimately, Mr. Speaker, we think, and lastly, is that you need to take away the basic necessities, like going out there or even being able to become a normal citizen, like an army, for example, right? Therefore, we think we should always put them in prison until they are properly rehabilitated before you allow them to go back to society. For all those reasons, we are very proud to oppose.
Mr. Speaker, let's make this clear in my reply speech that we clearly want this debate. Why? The first reason is government clearly didn't know what they wanted in this debate. It was either that they wanted prisoners to always be able to exit their prisons as early as possible regardless of the situation, or suddenly in the second speaker and later on that we need a larger army. Why do we need a larger army? Never really telling us why so. We told you time and time again that a quick exit from prison is contradictory and betrays the principles of justice, Mr. Speaker. That individuals that have killed another individual, that raped another individual in society, should serve prison and should die a civic death, Mr. Speaker, and should pay retribution to the victim and have them have that closure, Mr. Speaker, because it's just fair and just. We think allowing these individuals a quick exit from prisons and not be punished, in fact, being glorified in society because they're part of the most honorable job in society, being a serviceman, being a military officer that's dying for your country. This is injustice to everyone within the criminal justice system, and we think it's not right. Second objective is that they wanted a larger army. We told you time and time again, Mr. Speaker, they have to give us a context. Finally, in the third speech, they gave us a context of liberal democracies like United States of America. So, Matt told you, Mr. Speaker, that even in liberal democracies like United States of America, there's a trend of demilitarization, or at the very least, reducing troops on the ground. Like we pulled away from Afghanistan because we want our boys back home, and we don't want any more troops on the ground dying for a needless war. We don't necessarily see that there's any war in particular, in any country in particular, unless you're counting Syria, then that's a bit of an unfair debate, right, Mr. Speaker, that we don't have enough people to fight. So we think that on both ends of the spectrum, on both objectives of side government, it falls and it wasn't really substantiated. Let's talk about what were the general issues that we could extract from this debate, right? The first issue was about how the army will be perceived past this point, because they never really wanted to engage in Moyet's speech with the extensive analysis of how distrust is what you manufacture when you allow prisoners who have never even served their time and suddenly can now be forgiven just by serving in the military. Even though, Mr. Speaker, that most military officers never see action to begin with, and even most military officers specialize into fields like the medical field, or being a medic, being a military pastor, or what you mean, Mr. Speaker. People who are not on the front lines and people who don't die. This is an easy way out, and this harms the reputation of the army, and all the harms that are subsequent to that was never really engaged with. Secondly, we told you, lastly, that this disrupts rehabilitation. Because ultimately, Mr. Speaker, this is the ultimate objective of the punishment, right? Because they can't tell us that being in the military is just being in the military. In fact, they considered that rehabilitation is the fundamental objective because of the discipline that the military actually imposes for some reason. But I told you in my speech, and this was never really engaged with, that aggression is the fundamental tenet of a military. That aggression is not only encouraged, but it's also attached to values like glory, like validation, Mr. Speaker, that you being aggressive and killing a person is what protects our national security. Therefore, the only logical conclusion that a criminal can infer from that is that my pre-existing condition of being an aggressive individual is correct. It's something that protects this country, and when I finish my tenure in the military and go back into society, that doesn't change, and I'm still an aggressive individual that is criminally inclined. We think that this is extremely harmful when you glorify violence, you glorify criminals, and you glorify aggression. We are very proud to oppose.
I'd like to thank your reply, and I would like to call.
Mr. Speaker, now I'm going to tell you why the opposition side has gotten things all wrong and that we are the one that should be winning this debate. And first, before that, I'm going to tell you what has been happening from the opposition side. Okay. They keep on repeating about things like the trust issue, disrupting the rehabilitation, a way to recruit people, and also the aggression. Okay. Firstly, the rehabilitation. Okay. Isn't the harsh training in the military and also mentally tortured is enough to actually discipline and turn the criminals into something that is better for the society? And if you said that you said something about military service is not a way to rehabilitate. Okay. Why can't the military service be an alternative way to rehabilitate? Why is it wrong? You never told us that. And next is you talk about the trust issue. Okay, and the higher commands not being taken with. It's the military. You are trained and brainwashed. They know what happens if they disobey the higher command. And okay, first of all, these criminals are not that stupid. The only reason they went into this military service is because they want to try and reduce the sentence and also try and redeem themselves. But why really do you think that these criminals are even stupid enough to actually entrap themselves in more trouble, which will incur in more sentence time? And about the way to recruit these people. This is also an alternative incentive because, okay, you said like this USA is demilitarization. Okay, all that is propaganda because all nowadays that you can see on the news is that the UN, the US, the big powers are trying to push Iran into stopping their nuclear weapon development. So if they're trying to do that and they must be setting up to wage war because they know if Iran does not want to settle this case, they would wage war. And next is that on the aggression. Okay, aggression in terms of of protecting the country or protecting the thing that you love. Is that bad? Why is it bad? Because these people are already trained and disciplined to a certain manner. And if you're saying that leading to aggression is a bad thing, okay, I don't think you can see that these ex-military people going off killing people in the society, because they know what happens if they do this in society and also in war zones. There is a difference. So these ex-cons who has been trained, would know the same thing, and they would not be leading to doing the same crimes that they did before. Okay, now, the military might. Okay, they keep saying that the military might is not needed. Okay. With the world on this edge, all steps should be taken for the safety of the nation. All steps that can be taken should be taken. So, and what we see is that this is as an alternative way on how we can make some actions on trying to safeguard the country. Okay, they also said about this army is not being used in the front lines. Okay, and can be used in like medic or something. Okay. Example, the medics. How are you so sure that in these prisons that there are so many doctors that can be the medic? And also, if you are the medic, you are stationed in a war zone, in a war area. So, isn't that an enough trauma or something to be taken into check and balance before actually taking this consideration? And for that, we as a government propose. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all the debaters.